Well, joining us now for an in-depth look at this controversy is Robert Spencer. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Politically Correct or Incorrect Guide to Islam. Robert, it's a pleasure to welcome you back.
Thank you.
Cartoon showed Muhammad with a turban, and in the turban was a missile or bomb or whatever.
Yes.
Was he the progenitor, if I can use that term, of some of the radical concepts that are being exploited today around the world?
There's no doubt about it. As a matter of fact, that's what's one of the things that's so ironic about this controversy, is that they're so upset that Muhammad is being portrayed as violent in this way with this bomb in his turban. And yet Muhammad himself was a participant in 78 battles, 77 of which were offensive. They were not defensive. And he ordered the assassination of his enemies, including two poets who were utterly harmless, except that they made fun of him. His followers eagerly carried out those assassination orders. He told his followers to meet unbelievers on the battlefield and to offer them conversion to Islam, subjugation as inferiors under Islamic rule, or warfare. And so the tradition in Islam of warfare is deeply rooted in the example of Muhammad himself. And the people who are rioting about the insult to the Prophet Muhammad are well aware of this if they know anything about Islam at all. And so it is just what really offends them is that it's being said by non-Muslims and not by Muslims.
Let me ask you, how did he morph into this peace-loving person that was filled with beauty and love and all this kind of thing? I don't understand how the real Muhammad became the idealized Muhammad of today.
Well, the real Muhammad was a man of war, a man of violence, who spread his message through warfare to a tremendous degree, particularly toward the end of his career. And Muslims are aware of this, but in the West there is a large-scale campaign of deception that also is sanctioned by Islam in two places in the Quran, chapter 3, verse 28, and 16, verse 106. It sanctions deception of unbelievers in order to protect Islam. And there's a large-scale campaign, I think, that is designed to keep there from being any kind of organized resistance to large-scale Muslim immigration, particularly in Western Europe. And but the idea of Muhammad as a pacifistic individual, a peacemaker, a prophet in the mold of the prophets of the Bible, this is utterly fictional.
Well, the President of the United States has said Islam is a religion of peace. We hear this over and over again. And there's this tremendous umbrage at the State Department that somebody says something unkind about Islam and these people are terrorists. They should be, prosecuted. This paper should be brought up on charges of blasphemy. I mean, what's the game?
Well, I think the president is trying to keep there from being a large-scale war, a war with all 57 members of the Organization of the Islamic Conference, the largest Muslim multinational organization in the world. And that's perfectly reasonable, but at the same time, it has the tendency to demoralize people who would otherwise be completely supportive of him and of what he's trying to do. And it also tends to blur the focus of the debate. We are not fighting terrorism. Terrorism is a tactic that's been used by many groups throughout history. It was not invented by Osama bin Laden on September 11th, 2001. We are fighting a global jihad motivated by an Islamic ideology that's a deeply traditional ideology rooted in the religion of Islam that mandates that Islamic law must reign supreme over the world and that Muslims must fight in order to institute it. To ignore and deny that is to prevent us from meeting that challenge successfully. If the president were to stop saying Islam is a religion of peace and start saying, look, if you are receiving American aid, as is Egypt, Pakistan, and others, that then if you teach jihad and the supremacy of Islam and hatred of Jews and Christians and the necessity to institute Islamic law and subjugate Jews and Christians, then you will not receive any American aid. If you discriminate against non-Muslims, as Coptic Christians are so terribly discriminated against in Egypt, and Christians in Pakistan, and all through the Islamic world, if you do this, you will receive no American aid. But the fact that he is unwilling or unable to do this at this point keeps him from being able to take these kind of salutary measures.
Is Islam, and your book is called The Politically Incorrect Guide to Islam, is Islam truly a a religion of global domination? Is that really at the heart of what they say?
Yes, there's no doubt, Pat. I mean, of course, this is a question of that causes great confusion in the world today because people think, oh, you're saying all Muslims are terrorists or all Muslims are violent or something like that. Obviously, we all know there's a huge spectrum of fervor within every religion. And there are people who call themselves Christians who don't know anything about Christianity and don't follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. Just in the same way, there are many, many people in the world who call themselves Muslims and have only the most glancing acquaintance with what Islam actually teaches. But there's no doubt that when consulting the Quran and the Hadith, the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, the Sirah, the biography of the Prophet Muhammad, and the teachings of all the legal schools of Islam. Islam is a very legal religion, and there are 8 schools of jurisprudence within Islam. All 8 teach, as do all those traditions and the Quran itself, that Islam, the Islamic social order, must reign supreme in the world. It does not allow for equality of non-Muslims in Islamic societies, and it does teach that this supremacy must be spread through warfare as well as by other means. And one of those other means, as we are seeing now, is intimidation as well as subversion, and both of these are playing out in various ways in the cartoon controversy.
Well, if this controversy is won by the Muslims, what's the next battleground, in your opinion?
Well, what they're trying to establish, what they're trying to do with this cartoon rage and with these riots all around the world, is to compel Western societies to adopt Islamic law in this particular, in the sense of putting Islam above criticism. And that will allow jihad terrorists, who are allied, of course, or who are in many cases the same people as those who are rioting now, to operate with impunity in Western societies, because nobody will be able to speak openly about their motives or their goals, because it will be criminalized to do so. And this is a central tenet of traditional Islamic law for the treatment of Jews and Christians, that they are allowed the protection, so-called, of the Islamic State, as long as they accept their inferior status, and above all, do not insult Islam or the Prophet Muhammad.
Robert Spencer, I'm not looking forward to having an inferior status in a Sharia-run Islamic State. Thank you for sounding the alarm. This book,
it's pretty remote in the United States. It's not at all remote in Western Europe.
Certainly, it looks that way in France. They might be tending that way any time. We don't know.
Yes.
But The Politically Incorrect Guide to Islam and the Crusades, Robert Spencer, it's a New York Times bestseller, and it's still available where books are being sold.